Good to see you. Come in.
Hey. We were hoping to borrow your wassail bowl.
Oh, I'm sorry, Niles. I've already loaned it to Lawrence Emerson and his Madrigal Caroling group.
Well, you can kiss that bowl goodbye. Fraser, the Yule tones are the bad boys of Renaissance Christmas music. Have you ever seen a church common room after one of their performances?
Oh.
It's just...
Why don't you just use the punch bowl?
Well, because then it wouldn't be wassail, it'd be punch.
What's the difference?
My dad used to say that punch makes you want to kiss the donkey in the manger scene and wassail makes you want to check it into the inn.
Very funny. Listen, Daphne, I was just wondering, is your mom partial to a traditional Cornwall dressing? You see, I'm thinking it would go splendidly with the 12-pound Hungarian goose that I'm serving.
Mom is spending Christmas on a cruise. An early Christmas present from Niles.
Yes. I didn't think she'd go for it, but apparently in international waters they can play single-deck blackjack.
Oh!
Actually, Fraser, Daphne and I would like to have you over to our place for Christmas this year.
Yeah, we just put up our tree and everything looks so lovely, and it is our first Christmas as a married couple.
Well, as lovely as that sounds...
Oh, come on, why not?
Well, Niles, because it's a little late to be changing things, isn't it? Besides, we've always had Christmas here. It's a tradition.
Wassail. A Christmas punch.
The Wrestling Life.
Beneath the starry sky of a distant moon.
Hey everybody, it's The Wrestling Life. It's episode 320. We are back. It is the second week of December 2022. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Liam.
Liam, we have so much to talk about this week.
We really do. And so many things we can't talk about on this, still the first and still the only wrestling podcast.
So I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a Sasha Banks fan.
What?
Hello, Ethan. It is your girl, the legit boss, Sasha Banks.
And there's a report that is going to Japan for Wrestle Kingdom as a guest of New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's a PW Insider report. Usually their reports on who's going to be somewhere are pretty good because their sources are people in the travel departments of companies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they know who's got a plane ticket and that kind of thing. But Sasha Banks going to Japan for Wrestle Kingdom, as am I.
You guys have so much in common.
We really do. We always have. We're basically the same person. I've always said that.
I'm schooled. Both going to Japan for Wrestle Kingdom.
Yep. Both weren't allowed to watch wrestling growing up. Both watched wrestling growing up anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, so that's exciting. And we'll have to see if she's going to go work. If she's going to continue to work with WWE. If WWE's going to let her work Japan. A lot of moving parts to this thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the fact that if New Japan is flying her in, you wouldn't think they would do that if they weren't trying to, either if she wasn't already agreed to work with them in some way, or if they weren't trying to, wine and dine her to work with them in some way. I guess the finer points of what she can do, what her relationship with WWE will be going forward. That'll be fun to speculate about and to consider going forward. Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling with it. I do remember, I believe it was Sean Ross Sapp several months ago now, had a story about how Sasha's rep was contacted for a booking from some wrestling place for an appearance, WrestleCade maybe. And was told no wrestling bookings until January 1st. So that would line up with this timeline if she were going to show up on a New Japan show, after the new year.
Surely would. And Sasha and Kairi makes a lot of sense. Kairi, the first IWGP Women's Champion. has her first defense at Wrestle Kingdom, and we assume there's smoke to the fire that Sasha Banks will be the next opponent based on this today. But we will definitely have to see. A lot of moving parts to that story. A lot of moving parts to the William Regal leaving AEW story, which is kind of, I don't know how exactly, but maybe because he was in like 4 storylines at the same time on AEW television, and every effort that AEW made to further explain the AEW, the William Regal MJF storyline made the storyline more complex and less easy to understand. But William Regal leaving AEW, going back to WWE, whether his contract was not renewed or he got released from his contract, I guess there's some dispute about this. There's a lot of things about the story that don't make sense. But William Regal leaving AEW to go back to WWE, not the biggest surprise in the world, but maybe the timing is a bit of a surprise. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot of companies, a lot of wrestling companies that sign somebody to a 9-month contract.
Right.
First of all, or even a 3-year contract with an out after 9 months or whatever. So that was confusing because he didn't come in until March or whatever of this past year, and then he's as of Tony Khan's own words, he's a free agent and he'll be going back to WWE in the new year, basically. So, and they, as you mentioned, in a somewhat convoluted way, have written him off of AEW television. He's returned to his home planet, and I mean, from his perspective, it makes a lot of sense. If you've ever listened to William Regal speak about WWE, whether that's Vince or Triple H, he makes it very clear that he thinks he would be dead without them. And his years of drug use and everything, and feels like they took a chance and helped him get clean, and he's very loyal to that. Obviously, he and Triple H also have a long-standing relationship going back to their brief tag team in WCW before Paul went to WWF. So, and he was part of that NXT Performance Center system under Triple H as a coach and a talent scout and all that. So, and he didn't quit. He seemed, even new Vince regime of NXT that was in later 2020 and all throughout 21 and into 2022 before Vince was ousted, before Vince died, I should say. He was still working there until they finally cut him. So, it seemed like he was pretty happy with what he was doing and would have been fine just carrying on doing that. And that's, it's not to say he didn't. I'm sure he had some fun in AEW, but obviously also his son works for WWE and is in that NXT system right now. So there's a million and one reasons why it makes sense that William Regal wants to go back. The finer points of, was the contract not renewed? Did he get a release? As you pointed out to me off the air, if it was simply a contract not being renewed, I'm not sure how Tony Khan could enforce Regal not appearing on WWE television, as has been intimated by himself and other people that Regal will not be on WWE TV once he goes back, at least for a year. So that would make you think that it was some sort of conditional release and not a simple non-renewal. But either way, he's out of there, and that's the end of William Regal in AEW, and it sure was a 9-month period of time, wasn't it?
It was mostly fun. It was mostly fun. What did you think of the explanation that he gave on Dynamite this week, where he's like, we're filming this interview with myself and one of the great loves of my life, Tony Schiavone, and the only cameraman in this business that I trust. In the event that I get injured, we're going to show this, and it will prove that I am in fact Blackpool Combat Club until I die. What did you think of that explanation?
Bad. Not making a lot of sense to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you made it worse, and I think it was much better served to John Moxley when he simply ignored it and cut a promo about the Ring of Honor show instead.
Yes.
When it was over, because it didn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense why there's a line where he's like, I helped MJF because really I wanted to punish him or something, and it's like, okay, you punished him by giving him the world championship, all right. And really, this was just, I've given you my final lesson and whatever. I don't know. Again, I also question because according to Tony Khan's timeline of things, William Regal contacted the head of legal for AEW in October, right before the Toronto show.
Right.
So they've known if that's the case, and then the following week of television, I think he said maybe the week after the Toronto shows, they sat down and had a long discussion and hashed this out and decided they were going to let him go. Fine. But again, that was all before the pay-per-view where he turned heel and
he became the main character of AEW.
Right. Just in time to disappear. A fascinating decision to still do that if you knew the guy was leaving 2 or 3 weeks later. And again, maybe the logistics weren't ironed out. Maybe you thought he would be there until the end of the year. But even so, I mean, they were already doing the tournament where it was clear that Starks was going to wrestle MJF as his first opponent. So it's not like they were going to go right to a Moxley rematch or something where they could pay that off. Also, I mean, I was surprised he did the bump that he did with the MJF segment, but it's not like in the end Moxley can give him a Death Rider and send him off on his merry way. So it's not like you can really get comeuppance on him. So I guess they just decided to write him out, and no, it didn't make sense, and it didn't make sense to do it, especially if you knew he was leaving. And even in the version where they didn't know for sure he was leaving until like this week, I still don't think that explanation made much sense. So just a bizarre way of handling all of this from a behind the scenes perspective and the in front of the camera way they handled it.
So for 2 months, he's been the main character of AEW.
Mm-hmm,
For 2 months, they've known that he was leaving, according to their own timeline.
That does
fascinating.
That does appear to be the what the version of events we were given.
Fascinating. And I don't mean to make light of this, and we wish Mrs. Khan the best.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Khan somehow trying to explain that, like, maybe he wasn't paying attention when Regal asked for his release because his mom was sick. I didn't understand what that was. I didn't understand what that was.
When he was talking about his mom, yeah.
I didn't understand why he brought up his mom being in the hospital and what it had to do with the story, other than he kind of tried to tie it to, well, we're a family first company.
Right.
And I mean, I guess, I don't know. I nitpick that man to death.
You sure do.
I don't wish him or his family any ill, but
it's very brave of you to say.
I didn't understand. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Firefighters come up, shake my hand, and tell me you are braver than I am because you were willing to say things like that. I thought that was in poor taste.
Fair. Yeah, like I said, I think none of this made a lick of sense to me. Again, from when Paul tweeted out the Regal War Games clip on the night of Survivor Series.
Very catty.
Yes. Which, I mean, that I did enjoy that Tony was like, yeah, I didn't appreciate that, given that I'm kind of doing something I don't have to do by letting him out of his contract. But it's like, well, we learned a lesson, didn't we? Again, it's a war, man. No matter what Paul says, it's a war, and you beat the crap out of him and got him fired. He hates you.
Yeah.
That's all I got. I was like, I just thought when Tony brought up the Triple H tweet and how he was surprised by it, I was like, boy, I don't know how someone can be in the wrestling business for this long and still be this naive about things when you're dealing with WWE, especially. But God bless you, man. But but I think you should have expected it.
Well, Tony doesn't seem to learn a lot of lessons.
Well, I mean, when you've been rich your entire life, you don't really have to learn lessons, do you?
No, there's really not a whole lot of consequence to anything you do.
Correct. So, well, we learned that lesson again, didn't we? We'll see if it sticks this time. The next time he did make a point of, I forget who asked the follow-up question of like, well, there are other people in your company that seemingly want to leave and they have family in WWE or, wives or girlfriends and things like that. Yeah. And Tony was like, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this for everyone. And I was like, well, maybe don't use the justification that that you did it for family then, because it is, I think, a logical follow-up question to ask someone if you said that you're a family first company and you let Regal out primarily because after your own traumatic family experience, you wanted to help reunite a father and son. I don't know. I think it's a fair question to ask. What about, the guy whose wife is in another company, the guy whose girlfriend is in another company, whatever the relationship might be, the guy who just wants to leave, maybe his leave and him is hurting his family life. I don't know. So it was a valid follow-up question, which is not something I get to say about the wrestling media very often. So good job, everybody.
Yes.
Whoever asked that question.
Yes. It's very much a slippery slope argument.
Mm-hmm. And maybe he would have been better off just being like, he got down on his hands and knees and begged me to let him, hated working here. And so I said yes.
Maybe you could try telling the truth. That's all I'm saying. What did you make of the story that, I don't know, a lot of whispers, third-hand information through guys like EC3, your close personal friend, EC3, and Brian Pillman Jr., and things of that nature, that William Regal's advice was not always appreciated by young talent in AEW, and that he would try to hold like seminars at television once a week, and sometimes he would have a full audience, and sometimes it would be like Lee Moriarty and Brian Pillman Jr. and one other guy who I can't remember they named it, Pillman named, but a lot of buzz that Regal did not feel appreciated by young talent. A lot of buzz that young talent there view him as part of a system that they don't respect, that that he sold himself out by working for WWE as long as he did, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of moving parts to this, but what did you make of the story of young talent not listening to Regal, if that's in fact what happened?
I mean, I hate to be such a centrist about it, but I can see both sides of that, in the same way that when, Punk went on his rant about how Adam Page wouldn't listen to him and the Bucks and MJF and whoever don't listen to him. And I can understand why that would be frustrating from CM Punk's point of view, because he's done a lot of stuff and he's been a lot of places and he's made a lot of money. And on Regal's side, he's trained a lot of world champions. He's trained a lot of big stars in this industry and has been around and seen what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, you should want to learn from him. But I also think there is that style, especially if you, depending on, you may have gotten into the wrestling or gotten into the company by the side of like the Young Bucks, Kenny, do it yourself attitude, and then you see a guy who was Triple H's right hand man walk into your company and say, I'm going to teach you guys how to wrestle now.
Yeah.
And I can understand them going F off. Like, also, as far as I understand it, AEW has coaches and people like Dustin Rhodes and people like that who are, who are working with talent at these TV tapings already.
Madison Rain.
Right. Right. You don't need William Regal. You have Madison Rain.
Madison Rain will teach you how to wrestle.
Yes. Again, I'm not saying if it were up to me, if I was a young wrestler who was serious about honing my craft, yes, I would like to think that I would heed Lord Regal's teachings.
Yes.
But I also think I understand why a guy painted with such strong WWE colors walking in there and saying, all right, now it's time to get serious and teach you guys how to work would rub some people the wrong way. And you would want to tell the old man to F off. Like yeah. So I guess that's where I land on it. Like, I think that's a very believable story. There's a bit on commentary. I remember, I don't remember the exact context, but Regal is on commentary for a Hangman match.
Right.
And they ask him a question about Hangman Page, and he's like, I've never spoken to Hangman Page before. I've never really met. I talked to a lot of people backstage. He really keeps to himself. I don't really ever speak to him. I don't know what goes through his head. I don't know his philosophies on wrestling. And I just thought him saying that publicly on the air was like, at the time, was like, okay. So he's kind of in the camp of there's a cluster of people in this company that aren't interested in hearing from me, a very experienced person, and that rubs me the wrong way. So I'm bringing it up on the air.
Right.
And maybe I'm reading too much into that, but especially I think in light of the Punk stuff, it sort of exacerbated that kind of thing, and maybe the divide between the home team and the quote unquote WWE invaders has maybe gotten sharper. And the way that WWE guys coming in and trying to teach people is looked at by certain people probably a little bit less friendly and maybe it even would have been a year ago. So yeah, I totally believe that as a contributing factor, even if just wanting to go back to his old job and work with his son and all that was the main thing. Yeah, I could totally see this being a part of it if he felt like if his greatest love in wrestling at this point is to work with the next generation and teach, and there aren't a lot of people who want who want to be taught by him, then I imagine that could be a really frustrating deal for him.
Far be it from me to ever stick up for the elite, but I kind of get Hangman's point of view on a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
It's like, in large part, we are here right now because we got over on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, maybe really everyone should just be paying royalties to the guy who designed the Bullet Club t-shirt for the rest of their lives, because maybe that's not really at the heart of the matter.
Right.
But I can see it from Kenny and the Bucks and Hangman's point of view, where like, look, this whole company exists because we got over on our own. We did our own thing. And yeah, I don't know what someone from WCW 30 years ago is going to tell me about getting over today in wrestling. Like, I understand that.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. Like, I can definitely see. Now, William Regal is going to have a chain wrestling clinic before TV every week. I would probably attend.
Sure. Again, any company would benefit from having him. It's like, I do think that is a fair point to point out that everything, the AEW television show and the AEW company that William Regal walked into and did his best to help, let's say, was built by people who were doing things that people in WWE said would never work and couldn't work on a broad, television audience. And then it did. So, and again, a lot of factors went into it, as you said, a perfect storm of things, contracts coming due, the Jericho Kenny match. Like, there's a billion things. It's not just the elite didn't do this by themselves. Right. But yeah, I can understand why them and the people that kind of have come with them on this journey aren't looking for a a 6-year-old man who is Triple H's best friend to tell them how to work. I can understand why that would rub people the wrong way for sure.
So a lot of behind the scenes stuff. AEW television, they're building to Winter is coming next week. Feels like an afterthought because they have a Ring of Honor pay-per-view this weekend. A lot of buzz that they're going to be announcing a Ring of Honor television deal this weekend. Boy, there goes another night a week. But pay-per-view this weekend, Jericho versus Claudio for the ROH World Title. Do you think Jericho drops the title here?
I hope so, because if the stipulation is if Claudio loses, he has to join the JAS.
Yes.
And that would imply that the never-ending Blackpool Combat Club versus JAS feud has to continue. So I'm hoping for some finality here and for Claudio to go into the new year as the Ring of Honor champion.
Daniel Garcia versus Wheeler Yuta for the ROH Pure Championship, the most boringest championship in the history of wrestling. God bless these young lads. I hope one of them gets a personality transplant.
Well, my fascination with this is that we spent like most of the summer building television around Daniel Garcia and Chris Jericho and Bryan Danielson.
Garcia, the protagonist of AEW for the entire month of July.
Correct. And then ultimately they paid it off on that Toronto show and he decided not to turn, which is fine. You don't, just because you tease a dissension doesn't mean you always have to do the turn. But after that, the next AEW big show, Daniel Garcia wasn't on that show. They started teasing dissension between Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho instead. And I just don't understand why you spent all that time with Daniel Garcia. And then on top of that, Daniel Garcia is not wrestling Bryan Danielson, the man who he cost the world championship in October. He's wrestling Wheeler Yuta, a guy he beat clean for this championship like 6 months ago. So, it'll be a good match. These guys have had good matches on TV before. But and I thought, personality transplants maybe for Yuta. I thought Garcia held his own in that Jericho stuff this summer. I thought he was a compelling television character, but he's since that turn where he helped Jericho win, he just kind of been standing there. And yes. I guess wrestling on dark and stuff. And that is a macro problem in AEW, is that they will seemingly build up to a crescendo for somebody, and then they get the big win, or they don't get the big win, and then we just don't hear from them for 2 months afterwards. So, yeah, not Danny Garcia, not the only person who has suffered from this, but that was my thought when I saw this match. I was like, well, I've seen this match a few times already, and it felt like we moved on and that Garcia was getting ready to wrestle Danielson again or something. And it's like, no, we're just going to do him and Yuta again. Whatever, it'll be fine.
Mercedes Martinez versus the shooter Athena for the ROH Women's World Title. It's a match. It'll be something.
Mercedes is playing the role of the Undertaker here to take Athena to wrestler's court.
I guess. I don't know.
Sure to crack her knuckles in case Athena won't do business.
Fascinating.
What a loser. That's a different topic I could go off on one day. But
Undertaker is very upset that today's wrestlers do not shoot back straight whiskey and play dice and stab each other in the locker room. Instead, they play video games.
That's right. It would be, he would get along great with Katana Chance because she loves to shoot back straight whiskey.
Yes. This we know about her. Likes to shake a little something. As Kaden Carter likes to say sometimes.
All right, we'll get to NXT in a moment.
Yeah. Samoa Joe is wrestling Juice Robinson for the ROH World Television title. Juice Robinson signed, I guess. Hey, Juice is here.
Just like when he just popped up at that Tony Storm signing you went to a couple of months ago.
Yeah, and I spent all my time talking to Juice instead of Tony.
Uh-huh. He drew the eye, you know?
Jeez. Gosh.
Yeah. ROH legend
Ugh.
Juice Robinson is here to defend Ring of Honor's honor, I guess, against the two-belted Samoa Joe, who is feuding with Wardlow at the same time.
Sure. Swerve and our glory are back together. How can I miss you if you won't go away?
Uh-huh.
Versus Shane Taylor Promotions. Okay, fine. Like, I don't think they should have broken up Swerve and Keith right now anyway. And maybe they came to that same conclusion also because they just put them back together. They did kind of half-ass explain it with one promo on television where, like, Swerve put his hand over the camera and says, "We need to talk." But, which is, it's not nothing. They did try something, but also why did they build like a month of television around these two guys having issues and then they just keep teaming?
Yeah, they had issues from like week 1 of them teaming together.
Yes.
And then they won the tag titles and they were good guys for a while and they stopped having issues. And then they lost the belts and started having issues again. And then they broke up seemingly. And then now they're not. So yeah, we just we're hot and cold on this one. We just keep going back and forth on it. So it'll be a good match. I'm glad Shane Taylor's getting a look. If Ring of Honor is going to get to be its own thing, he's a guy I'd want on my television show. So glad he's getting a look. And I know he and Keith Lee go way back. So I'm sure, again, as with everything on the show, I think it'll probably be good wrestling, but yeah, nothing. It's amazing how slapped together this show feels, considering how much time we devote to Ring of Honor every week on AEW television. Yet somehow still feels like a complete afterthought.
Tony said he's really tried to keep ROH off of Dynamite lately, and I'm like, didn't Samoa Joe just defend the ROH TV title last week?
I think so.
Show?
Or maybe it was the TNT one he's defended.
Anyway.
But the Jericho thing is still like the main event of every show for the last 2 months.
I swear, this man is not watching the same program that I am. Dalton Castle and the boys defending the ROH 6-man tag title against Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony. Just a horrible name for a team.
So it's such a horrible name that I'm surprised they're not an NXT tag team from like 2014.
Gates of Agony.
Like that feels like what the Ascension would have been called when they first got to NXT.
Good call. And in a match added to Saturday's 4 p.m. Eastern Time pay-per-view, the normal time. So we like to call that start time. They added a tag title match in the final 14 seconds of Dynamite this week. FTR will be wrestling the Briscoes in a double dog collar match for the ROH tag titles because why not?
Well, I thought it was a pretty creative way of getting around the Warner Media's very strong no Briscoes policy. But yeah,
they had the gun Billy.
Which is it's an amazing thought to be like, we're gonna have Billy Gunn's dickhead sons cut a promo for the Briscoes.
Yes. Yeah, that's what they did. These guys apparently have bangers. I don't know. I've never seen any of them, but they apparently gonna have a banger in a dog collar match. Probably gonna be a lot of blood. And everyone will love this match, and they will love their Ring of Honor.
Sure. I mean, I think critically, I think all of these Ring of Honor shows since Tony, at least decently well received. They're not long, which is good and different than most other Tony Khan booked pay-per-views. And there's usually good wrestling on them. I really liked the first FTR Briscoes match. That was just a wrestling match. I thought the 2 out of 3 falls match overstayed its welcome a little bit, and we'll see, I guess, what this one how how this one is received with the blood and the violence. But sure, it's a rematch of the biggest Ring of Honor, or the most talked about Ring of Honor match all year, if you can call it a Ring of Honor match. Ring of Honor in name only, maybe. But yeah, it's happening on the Ring of Honor show for the third time. It's a trilogy now, and you do the big crazy bloody brawl to end it there.
So that's the first pay-per-view coming up on Saturday. The second pay-per-view starts at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
NXT Deadline, where they've brought back they're introducing a new match type. It's the Iron Survivor Challenge, which is like a mix of a scramble match and TNA's King of the Mountain match, from as best I could tell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this program, oh boy. So on this show, but we'll get to the two Iron Survivor Challenge matches in a moment. But Elbow Fire versus Isla Dawn is on this program. Elbow Fire is of course Kaylee Ray, who, in the tradition of WWE and Scottish superstars, they've given her a name that she cannot pronounce. So she is Elbow Fire.
Sure.
That's happening. Pretty Deadly, Best Act in WWE, are defending the NXT tag titles against the New Day. Braun Breaker is wrestling Apollo Crews for the NXT title in a match built on mutual respect and friendship.
I saw the gimmick of them fishing, which I thought was pretty funny. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was supposed to be funny, but it made me laugh.
Well, they go fishing together. They share meals at the diner, and they're just going to have a little friendly competition for the title.
So is the conceit here that secretly one of them is going to like kick the other one in the balls during the match and turn heel?
I hope so. I mean, I don't want to see two friends who they just established were friends 2 weeks ago wrestle for the championship. Like, I don't know. Neither of these guys is Mr. Charisma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really funny in Sean's conference call this week when they asked him who he could see going up to the main roster next. He mentioned Apollo Crews in there. This 34-year-old guy who was on the main roster for 5 years. I think he could make it. I think he might have a chance up there.
Oh.
Sean doesn't watch the product. It's fine.
It's probably for the best he doesn't. All right. The Iron Survivor Challenge, the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge. Oh. These are the rules. 2 wrestlers start the match. Every 5 minutes, another wrestler enters until all 5 participants are present. After the last wrestler enters, there's a predetermined time limit. Each time a wrestler scores a pinfall, submission, or is the victim of a disqualification, they gain a point. A wrestler who is pinned, submitted, or disqualified goes into a penalty box for 90 seconds. The winner of the match is the wrestler who scores the most points at the end of the time limit. The winners of the men's and women's matches become the number 1 contenders for the NXT Championship and NXT Women's Championship, respectively. Whoo, boy. So the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge, Zoe Stark, Cora Jade, Roxanne Perez, Kiana James, doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, and Indy Hartwell.
Okay. My first thought is that whoever came up with the name Iron Survivor Challenge should be fired.
Fair enough.
Just the least creative, just mishmashing buzzwords like you threw a dart
Yes.
at different wrestling words and stipulation names and just went. It's like how this is a terrible aside, but I'm just going to do it. The Marvel Comics Secret Wars event. It's where Spider-Man gets the black costume from.
Sure.
It was called that because they focus tested. They were doing a toy line that was going to tie in, and they asked kids what words they liked best. And the 2 words that tested the highest were secret and wars. So that's why this like very famous comic thing that's going to be made into like $1 billion movie in a couple of years is called that is because a toy company did some focus testing, and that's what this feels like to me. They just focus tested that, the room of writers just went around and picked out some words, some different buzzwords, and smushed them together.
Seems pretty likely. So is there anything Secret or Warish about the Secret Wars saga?
I wouldn't really say so, because the comic is just like a guy teleports a bunch of superheroes and a bunch of supervillains to an alien planet and makes them fight. It's a very bare bones, even by like the standards of like 1980s comic books.
Yeah.
It's a very bare bones concept.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of anything, but
there was a more modern like sequel that also involved like multiverse versions of everyone showing up, which is, I assume, what the movie will take from. But it's the excuse is that it's an excuse to get some actors that people recognize in costumes they wore 15 years ago for a movie, because that's how IP driven cinema is made now. It's let's remember some guys.
by the way, we should report Black Adam is actually going to profit between 30 and 70 million dollars. Dwayne said so. Dwayne is not mad that someone reported that Black Adam was going to be a money lizard. Don't put on the internet that Dwayne was mad. Dwayne is not mad.
That's right. He's definitely not getting iced out by the new DC heads.
That's another story for another day. The men's Iron Survivor Challenge, Carmelo Hayes, who is good, versus JD McDonough, who is like 5 below Finn Balor, versus Grayson Waller, who is like Australian 5 below Miz, versus Joe Gacy, who is like 5 below Bray Wyatt, versus Axiom, who is a kid under a mask. Ooh. Well, that's what I'll be doing with my Saturday night.
Do you feel like the winners of these get title shots?
Correct.
Mandy has been champion for like 7 years.
She just crossed 365 days, I believe. Yes. Yes.
And Braun's been champion for a pretty long time now. I guess other than his pit stop loss to Ziggler.
Yeah, he did a short switch, but aside from that, let's see. He has been NXT. Anyway, continue.
So just like, does it feel like we're getting behind somebody to ascend? Like, I mean, I'm looking at hearing the names in the women's one. It's like, well, all those people, to my knowledge, have just, with the exception of Kiana James, have just been on that television show forever. And it feels like it's time to like fish or cut bait with a lot of these names, because they've been on NXT television for 2 years. And I kind of thought we weren't just hoarding people in NXT anymore. Like, it was like, you're in, you get shipped up to the main roster. We take a look at you for 6 months and go from there.
I'm editing this one, so I'm going to control this conversation. We're going to go down the list of the women here. Zoe Stark, they just put a new painted coat on. They just turned her heel. She made a lot of mean faces. And she turned on her alleged Proud Girls tag team partner, the great Nikita Lyons. So Zoe, they made her, she was at like producing matches when she was out hurt. Like, they think highly of her. Okay. She didn't wrestle for like 8 years and is like one of the best girls they have. And they just put a new coat of paint on her as a heel. So maybe Cora Jade, they just turned her heel. And she and Braun are a real life item. And I think I don't trust the intentions of people that are really big Cora Jade fans. Just put it that way. She's a barely like 21 or 22-year-old woman who looks like a child, and I don't trust anyone who is a really big Cora Jade fan. But they seem high on her, and she's fairly recently turned heel. So, yeah, Roxanne Perez is really good and is babyface, and should probably already be on the main roster. So, she's also maybe the only babyface in this match. So, if you want a babyface to beat Mandy, I guess that makes sense. Kiana James, I don't know. They're giving her a shot. Indy Hartwell. Indy's been there a long time. She's really tall. She's really tall.
Mm-hmm.
And she is strong. And those are things that you really have to appreciate about Indy Hartwell.
Seems to be polite and rarely late.
Yes. She got into wrestling because of Bailey and Sasha Banks. And so I think Hunter likes her. And she's tall. So I think
I did see they reunited her and Dexter at like an NXT house show this past weekend. So like, why don't you just put them together on TV? Like,
they put the rest of that crew together on Raw this week.
Yeah.
So that may be where they're going with that. So I guess I would pick Roxanne Perez to win out of that group. I don't know.
I mean, she's the only one that I am aware of and have seen. I've seen wrestle more than like 2 times of that group, other than Indy, I guess. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I mean, she's really good, and yeah, she's someone that you should be building around for the next 10 years. So she's also young, though, correct? Wasn't she like 19 when she was Ring of Honor champion?
Yeah, Roxanne's really young. She might, yeah.
It might be a maturity issue, as we like to label things in wrestling.
If anything, I don't think it's because of any specific issues with her. I think that would just be like, okay, we're not going to push anyone until they're 22 or whatever.
Sure.
I don't think there's any like.
I don't think. I didn't mean maturity as far as like a behavioral issue.
Right.
Which is maybe the term that maybe that's usually what that implies. But she needs some seasoning. That's the term I'm looking for. Seasoning is what she's lacking currently.
Sure. I can see that argument. I think she's better than most people already in the company, but I could see that argument.
Wow, better than Dana Brooke and Carmella and Zelina Vega and whoever else. B-Fab.
Top Dollar, the worst wrestler. The worst wrestler in WWE. Gosh, she makes Brodus Clay look like Luthez.
Oh gosh, really a shame that Top Dollar got re-signed by WWE before Bill Corgan could put the Top Dollar Tyrus Dream match together.
Really, yeah. Out of the guys, Carmelo is good, and he has kind of a character. JD feels like he's already had cycle through a couple of title programs there with Braun.
Mm-hmm. And he's a sex criminal, allegedly.
They don't seem to care about that.
That's true. If anything, that seems like a plus in your resume for that company sometimes.
Indeed. Grayson Waller, for some reason, they're very high on.
Mm-hmm.
His work is not very good. His talking is not very good. I don't know. I think that's a TV match. Like, I could see Roxanne and Mandy being the WrestleMania program, or their whatever the Stand and Deliver, their WrestleMania weekend show will be. But yeah, so I guess that's what's coming out of there going forward. We are like way into the show, and we haven't talked about WWE main roster yet, because really, what's there to say?
I mean, yeah, we're a little past Survivor Series now. Obviously, Becky came back since we last did a show. That's been the biggest thing on WWE television, but
the Bloodline, the War Games, Sami Zayn, very popular.
Roman Reigns got big mad at Kevin Owens for slapping him in the War Games.
Kevin Owens hates Roman Reigns' eardrum. That's my takeaway from that story.
That's right. So yeah, but as far as the television that has transpired since then, well, last week's show, a week from this past Monday, had a third hour that had a long Candice LeRae and Dakota Kai match, and then a long Kevin Owens versus Jey Uso match.
Yeah.
And it did not do well. And then surprisingly, a third hour this week that had a Becky Lynch match in the main event did like the worst hour in the history of professional wrestling for Raw, which obviously is not the fault of the people involved, but it just doesn't feel like a hot show right now. They did like a through line of the show of like a poker tournament with JBL and Corbin, and that led to some stuff.
Very, very Vince.
Oh yeah. It was a very Vince idea. I don't know. Like I don't think the shows have been bad necessarily, but yeah, Roman hasn't been on the shows, so you have the NWO team. I mean, like you said, Sammy's very over, and people like the Usos and Solo Sikoa is also there. And they're just doing some stuff. Like they're gonna do a tag title match with Sheamus and Butch against the Usos this week, and they're gonna do, they're just trucking along. There's no December pay-per-view for WWE this year, so
yeah,
we're just kicking the can until it's time to build the Rumble. And really, if years past are any indication, that means until like 9 days before the Royal Rumble is when we'll start feeling a sense of urgency on the show again.
Yep. Rollins versus Lashley for the number one contendership to the U.S. title is the big match on Raw on Monday.
It's just, I think they're trying to make a concerted effort to make people care about the U.S. Championship.
Yeah.
But it's like, Austin Theory has it.
Yeah.
If a real star held it, it would matter, right? And that's always the thing, which was at least for years the WWE philosophy, was that it doesn't matter what belt it is, it matters who's holding it, right? It's the man makes the title. And I think that's a self-fulfilling prophecy on WWE television, because if Lashley is the champion or Seth's the champion and is defending it on TV regularly, it will feel important. But when a guy like Austin Theory gets it doesn't feel so important anymore, does it?
There is something to that. All right. Is there anything else you want to get into?
No, I think that's about it. We've just covered the whole landscape of wrestling. It sounds like the new year is going to be exciting. Like I'm interested in this Sasha thing. We've talked before about how if there is a single promotion in Japan that feels like it has momentum right now, it's Stardom, and Sasha going there feels like the biggest like needle moving thing to happen in a non WWE company or a non AEW company since Jericho went to New Japan for the first time. So that's a big exciting story to look forward to, I think. Even if you're personally not the biggest Sasha Banks fan, or you don't personally plan on watching her, like her versus Kyrie would be a really big deal. And also kind of playing off the end of Kyrie's WWE run, if you remember. So there's that as well. You're capping a years long feud at this point if you get that match off the ground.
All right. Well, till next time, everyone. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Liam.
We'll be back soon with more stories from the wrestling life.
Bye-bye.
You tell me that you want it, yeah, yeah. You tell me that you need it, yeah, yeah. And no, you can't have it.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Now, here are this week's bonus features.
I was trying to read this Dan Snyder piece that just dropped right before.
Oh, dang. Well, there's my evening sorted.
There's just a lot of stuff about how he did a lot to obstruct the congressional hearing and the testimonies of the people involved. And then there were like quotes from like it just said the Republican, so I guess it's like the party spokesperson saying that it was a partisan witch hunt and all of that. So Yeah, but it was just a lot of things. It was the quote is like he obstructed, he intimidated witnesses, and he routinely claimed he couldn't remember or didn't know the answer to very basic questions. That sounds like Dan. There's the guy I know.
This is what we like to call vintage Dan. Read that his whole thing for not wanting to sell the team was so he could hand the team over to his kids. So it's like, what if you sell the team and you get $2 billion and you hand your kids $2 billion?
Yeah.
You think they might appreciate that more?
I would think so. I mean, heck, with that money, they could probably go buy another team if they want. Go buy into a good team.
Well, certainly hope things turn around for our friend Dan.
A lot of you think Dan's pushing himself out of his job. But he would never do that to himself.
He's not that kind of guy. The Washington Post has also reminded us that Dan, the family guy. He's a family guy, a good family man.
Good family man.
I try to keep on keeping on.